Hello, hello. And I'm so happy today to be here with my good friend and associate, Dr. Keith McNally. And Keith, please let people know a little bit about your story and why the Spark event that we did in Raleigh, North Carolina was so important for you.
Oh gosh, and first, of course, thank you. I always love having conversations with you, and this is going to be a good conversation in and of itself. The Spark event. So, can we pull dates out of the air? That was a very specific date because so much wraps around that. So we're talking what, the 21st of September,
21st
20
of September, 2024.
2025. Yeah,
Four.
2024. Sorry, because it's
Mm-hmm.
2025 now. Um, so One, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to orchestrate and facilitate that panel member discussion because it was kind of a middle part of an evolutionary growth process for me. Everything that occurred before that moment and everything that has occurred after that moment has just kind of changed my life. And so I'm on this transformation growth journey, all because of 5 things. And I say 5 things, but I always add one more thing. So, just to kind of give context here, 5 suicide attempts.
Mm.
The last one being in 2021, and then following that in 2022, I had a major heart attack. So,
Mm.
for all intents and purposes, I shouldn't be here. I've made my life my own chaos, and then my body decides, well, we're just gonna make it quit. The thing is, I haven't. I haven't quit and I haven't died. So, what I needed to do was find value somewhere, somehow, and I did that. So, a real quick summary to kind of get us to the Spark event. After this, the suicide attempt, my fifth suicide attempt, and the heart attack, I began having conversations with people, mostly my LinkedIn connection list, which at that point was 2,000. Now it's close to 10,000. And I started having conversations with people who were transforming their own lives. I hadn't gotten to that point yet, but I was living vicariously through all of those conversations. And so I decided to record them and publish them. And so the first real, I call it a podcast, but they're just conversations, was the Question Guy podcast. This is people's personal stories that evolved into Coach's Corner because a lot of people took their personal transformation and became coaches or speakers.
Mhm.
And so I brought them back to talk about what they do professionally. And then that evolved into the Envision Speaker Series. And that was where people weren't just coaches or, you know, subject matter experts in something. They were passionate about what that was. And so I asked them to bring themselves and their colleagues back for panel member discussions. And that was the Envision Speaker Series. And you were part of that. You were part of that, I think, January, a year or two ago. And I forget that, forget the year. That evolved into what we all put together, and that's the Spark event. It's because we're all passionate about ending suicide or creating awareness for people who struggle with suicide ideation, such as myself. And so being able to kind of step into this space where there's 7 people and myself who have all been impacted by suicide on whatever realm that is, whether we've attempted it or somebody they know, whether a family friend or church member or community member, doesn't really matter. The impact is there. And these 7 people were able to sit down together. Many of them didn't even know each other.
True.
And they allowed me to facilitate their story so that they can share the pain, the grief, the frustration, but also the victory because there was a transformation that changes our lives. So whether we know somebody who's attempted it or have done it, or like I said, yourself who has attempted it, it changes us. It impacts us in ways that we can't possibly imagine. And that's why that spark event was so important.
Mm. Mm, I love it. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more. The stories and such that came out were incredible. And the fact that you had grown enough through your own process to be able to facilitate that was a beautiful thing to be able to witness for sure. So, I mean, can you give everybody just some ideas about ways that you benefited from being part of that spark event, other than the fact that it gave you some more practice of being able to be out there in the public and pulling people together. But I believe you might have gotten some other benefits from being connected to this as well.
So I think having conversations with people is so important. And, we in social media, there's this triad called know, like, trust. And as we kind of build those connections and we build that trusting relationship with people, people were actually saying, and the fact that I'm a veteran, disabled veteran, but a veteran, um, sometimes I'm just a guinea pig. And so people want to try out, something they've learned or they do, and, one of the things, you know, I was allowed to embrace and become a part of is different healing modalities. So, typically we know of for somebody with PTSD, depression, and psychosis, and all those things, the traditional methodologies, therapy, medications, psychiatric treatment, and they all have their space, right?
Mhm.
But there's different things out there. If we push more towards holistic appreciations, whether it's acupressure, acupuncture, um, meditation, breathing exercises, and then we talk going into, what how are we connected with ourselves spiritually,
Mm,
you know?
important.
Um, then we start opening up new doors, new approaches to what health is, what being healthy is, and how to better manage symptomologies.
Mm.
So and I think both of them were connected through you, um, was able to kind of undergo different types of non-traditional treatment modalities that may not have been what the provider expected, but how I evolved from those methodologies, they gave me a better understanding of me. And for me, that was important. So whether or not, through energy healing, not Reiki, but a different form of energy healing, um, that things like a magic wand all disappear. For me, they didn't. This wasn't like an overnight success. Oh, I'm better. They gave me a better insight into how my past and my present and my future are connected.
Mm.
And having that insight was kind of a breakthrough for me. We don't typically recognize the things that we're dealing with now may be cyclical because of deep rooted trauma. And I'm not talking about, war trauma as a veteran, but they could be any trauma. They could be things that you don't even remember. You might have a really bad parents growing up, and things that they may have said and done may not have set well with you, and they created these trauma experiences. Now, real quick, when I was 7, my parents separated and divorced. I don't have any real memory of family between 7 and 10, my
Mm.
age, 7 and 10 years old. Um, I've only recently found out what happened in those years, those 3 years, through conversations with my sister. But that's just kind of to give some insight into things happen in our lives. And traditional therapy may not even know how to get there, but other forms of therapy or other forms of healing may provide those doors, those windows, those pathways where you can see, oh, wow. And, and then kind of connect those dots and then kind of work through it. And then you can kind of bring them up in traditional therapy. I had
Yep.
this experience. I had this conversation with whomever, and I found out that this possibly could have caused what I'm dealing with. So I
Mm.
think that in and of itself is important. You
Yeah.
can't put any real, what's the word I'm looking for? It is so valuable to have those insights
Yeah.
because they bring, if you're willing to kind of push the boundaries, they bring you back to yourself
Yeah.
and they allow you to make amends, to gain peace, or at the very least, gain an understanding of why you are where you are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you for that, Keith. I appreciate hearing your perspective, and that's part of what we're doing with We Care Partnerships and the Hope Institute is we're encouraging what we call integrative healing.
Yeah.
There's so much value that can be gotten from talk therapy and meds when necessary, but integrating these other components, I feel like, can just get people so much more results, and hopefully in somewhat less time. So thank you for sharing your story with us. We wish you much success. We know you're preparing for the Appalachian Trail next year, and that'll be part of your healing story as well. So we appreciate you and we thank you, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. Good to have this conversation.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.